time now for a look at what's trending in China. That's a look at what is making the headlines in national newspapers. Now, after USPS walked back on an earlier decision to halt some shipments from China and Hong Kong, an editorial in the Global Times says the U-turn not only reveals contradictions from Washington, but also highlights the resilience of US-China trade relations.
Now, the piece points out small parcels can contain daily necessities for, well, American households and businesses, and say that they are actually the ones bearing the brunt of these tariff policies, and that's something officials are actually echoing.
The United States recently imposed a 10% tariff on Chinese products exported to the United States and adjusted the tax-free policy on small value parcels. This will undoubtedly increase the consumption costs of American consumers and undermine the shopping experience.
Minmin Lo is on camera to tell us about this story, that these retailers on these platforms are being asked with how much deposit?
30%.
Okay, for what?
So they're being asked by the logistics agent to pay 30% deposit, which they will have to top up or have it returned to them depending on the actual tax charges from the U.S. Customs. And this is after the U.S. Postal Service had flip-flopped on their policy about whether to accept parcels from China and Hong Kong. They have reversed that now, saying that they will find a more efficient way to collect those tariffs. But then you have the Hong Kong Post now saying that they are not accepting parcels that are being sent to the U.S. because they are in talks with the U.S. Postal Service. They're still clarifying certain issues. So either way, there is going to be some disruption to the post. The question is how long, and that is what retailers are most worried about, especially small businesses that are working very hard to protect their reputation with consumers, and also the factories. They could be at risk of closure if there is any halt to these deliveries, because they're already operating on very razor-thin margins. They don't have a lot of room to lower prices further, which means that U.S. consumers will likely have to bear the brunt of any price increases. And especially this is going to be acute for those low-value goods like socks, fashion accessories that are being sold. And Nomura, for example, is estimating that China had sent about $46 billion worth of these goods, small parcels, each valued at less than $800 last year. And of course, these parcels used to be exempted from any customs duty because of the de minimis rule, but now that is being revoked by Trump. And Nomura is saying it could cost China about 1.3% of its exports growth and about 0.2% of its GDP. So pretty significant, given that China sends about, that these small parcels make up about 11% of China's exports to the U.S.
And you mentioned the Hong Kong Postal Services there as well, but it's not the only way that Hong Kong is really being caught in the crosshairs between US, China here. The anxiety that a lot of businesses here have always felt, which is that Hong Kong increasingly appears to be getting lumped in with China when it comes to policy making. Just tell us how, that's sort of risking Hong Kong's status as a financial hub.
Yeah, and I'm sure you know very much about that because you co-wrote that story as well. And
pretending to ask the question, Rebecca.
Please tell me about the story that I wrote earlier today.
Yes, so President Trump, if you recall, in his first term in office back in 2020, he signed that executive order to end preferential treatment for Hong Kong when it comes to economic and trade matters. So what this means is that those 10% tariffs imposed on Chinese goods, for the first time, they also apply to Hong Kong goods as well. But for now, economists are saying don't panic because the tariffs apply to goods manufactured in the city, and that applies to about just 1.3% of Hong Kong's exports to the U.S. Things like jewelry, metals, gold, because the bulk of Hong Kong's exports consist of these re-exports from other countries. So that's the good thing. But there is a psychological impact here because you look at companies like Hutchinson's, which operates that 2 of the 5 ports in the Panama Canal that is now being targeted by the U.S. Companies looking at that case are going to think twice about investing overseas, especially in strategic sectors that could potentially come under fire from the U.S. administration as well. So all of these adding together, you mentioned the Postal Service disruption, they really threaten to ruin Hong Kong's reputation as that stable business hub, that international connector between mainland China and the rest of the world, especially when these policy differences between mainland China and Hong Kong starts to erode over time.